We'll get started here so we can stay consistent and concise with our 1-hour webinar. My name is Nolan Bergstrom. I'm a community planner here in the Community Planning Economic Development Department. Today, we're going to be covering several projects in this quarter two update. The first quarter webinar was back in February. So if you missed that and would like to catch up on that one, that is also available on the City of Kalamazoo YouTube page. And we have staff here today from our Public Works Division and Planning Department to touch base on these projects. So first, I just would like to outline sort of the order of the webinar and some housekeeping reminders and introduce the staff panelists that we have. So moving forward here. So our agenda is real simple. I'm just going to go over those housekeeping items for the webinar. We'll introduce our panelists. We'll give them space to provide updates on their projects. We'll have a Q&A session at the end, and we'll conclude after that Q&A session. For those here as attendees, there's a Q&A chat box that Zoom provides. You can input questions during today's webinar that we can get to at the very end. We're going to try and keep those questions just for these projects today. If you have questions about different projects happening in the city, you can always reach out and submit a request or those comments and questions to 311, or check out the City of Kalamazoo website to find the project page for that project, and you can subscribe to keep up to date with any updates to that project. And this webinar will also be recorded. So it's recording right now. What you'll see in probably about a week or so after this webinar's conclusion is it should be up on the city YouTube page. So if you know anyone who wasn't able to make it today, you can always share that link with them and they can catch up that way. So today we have public services and community planning staff, like I mentioned, to walk through these projects that they're managing, provide updates, and then field some of your questions at the end of the webinar. From our Public Works Division, we have Dennis Randolph, our traffic engineer. We have George Waring and Tom Palumbo, two of our senior civil engineers. We have Anthony Ladd, the Assistant Director of Public Works, as well as Ryan Mayer may not be here, but he's the Assistant City Engineer for wastewater. And then myself and my coworker, Jay Slaby, our neighborhood activator. So each of the panelists will be providing an update on their specific project that they've either been assigned to manage or have had a lot of touch points with through the process. And we'll start with phase one work occurring along Ransom Street, which Jay Slaby will provide an update on. And then we'll move into updates for White's Road, Patterson Street Bridge, and Howard Street from Oakland to Stadium. And those will be updates provided by Anthony Ladd. And following that, we'll have updates on West Edge Avenue and Michigan Avenue from Dennis Randolph and George Waring. And we will finish off today's webinar with George Waring and Tom Palumbo talking about the sidewalk repair work that's happening citywide and the new sidewalk construction. And as far as how each slide's outlined, we'll be presenting in a similar format to the February webinar as this slide shows. We'll give high-level details like the general timelines, total budgets, and cost, plus their sources, and the work slated to be completed. Please note, though, that these details are subject to change due to supply chain issues or other conflicts. And the best way to stay connected and informed with these projects is to visit the city's website, attend to these webinars, because we hope to do 2 more of these each quarter, And then you can also check out the Imagine Kalamazoo website. And like I mentioned earlier, there's always 311 if you have questions or concerns or are looking for answers about a project. So with that, I'll turn it over to our first staff presenter, Jay Slaby, to talk about the Ransom Street Phase 1 work.
Thank you, Nolan. So for Ransom Street, which is located on the north side, we will be starting construction on July 24th of this year, and we'll continue into next year to complete Phase 2. So this past year, we were awarded funding from the state to replace critical infrastructure, including 9 city blocks worth of sewer main underground, as well as other utilities, stormwater, and lead service lines to be replaced. And so as part of that project scope, we looked at the North Side neighborhood plan, and there were several other improvements that residents had stated they wanted to see as part of previous engagement sessions that we held over the last few years with this neighborhood. And so that included looking at lighting improvements along the corridor, wider sidewalks, filling in sidewalk gaps where there are none, looking at increasing landscaping, particularly with additional street tree plantings, and looking at how we can invest culturally within the North Side Cultural Business District Authority to include historical markers that talk about the legacy of Black businesses in the neighborhood. And so some of these amenities will come in the future phases, but starting this summer, we will work from Wallbridge to Pitcher. And then once that work is completed, we will restart next spring to go from Pitcher all the way to West Niche Avenue. And those will be the base elements such as the sewer main, other underground utilities, resurfacing of the street. The brick pavers will be removed and potentially reused in other areas. And we will then also plant trees and increase lighting along the corridor, and then repair and replace sidewalks as needed. And then in future phases, as we seek additional funding, we'll look at other elements such as those historical markers and additional landscaping elements. As you see on the screen, the budget, what we have budgeted through 2023 is close to $9.5 million to initiate this work. And we did a intensive stakeholder engagement process last fall to work with direct stakeholders along Ransom Street to ask them about their detour needs. So as people start to see construction begin, we ask people to share any questions or concerns through 311, and they can always stay regularly connected with updates by going to imaginekalamazoo.com/project/Ransom Street and sign up to receive emails. And you will receive those every 2 weeks to monthly based on the updates that we are able to share. So you can stay connected on any detour route changes or just understand the progress that we've made so far on construction. One bonus that I think was really exciting as part of this project is we did meet with MDOT and Amtrak to review the railroad crossings. There's 2 along this corridor. And through those conversations, they're moving forward with rebuilding both crossings during this construction as well. So we'll see improvements in at those intersections, which will be great for all users. So I think I am complete with the overview for Ransom Street.
Awesome. Thank you, Jay. I did realize as you were speaking that Ryan Stoughton's here. He's also helped with Ransom Street. Ryan, was there anything that you wanted to add that Jay missed? Okay, I guess not. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. All right, and then we'll move on to White's Road. And Anthony
Hey,
Ladd.
sorry, Nolan. Sohail and I are having technical difficulties, never doing this before. So we're trying to sort through how this thing works and how to interact with it. So yeah, we've missed a whole bunch of this so far.
Okay. Well, that's all right. I think Jay did a wonderful job of covering it, so we will loop back around at the end during the Q&A session.
Nolan,
Yeah.
one second, Ryan, if you're able to, maybe it
Yeah.
would be nice to share why it's so important that we're replacing the sewer main along the street.
Yeah. So we're upsizing the interceptor that runs down Ransom Street. We call it the Ransom Street Interceptor. We're very creative in our naming structures. So historically, it has been undersized for, gosh, roughly 20 to 30 years from a capacity perspective. So just, everybody's priorities have aligned to where it made sense that we can now join forces between the three utilities to really get the best value through this corridor, utilizing everybody's resources and then the needs of the other two utilities, water, stormwater, and then streets as well. So, criticality from a flow perspective, so that way we have the capacity to continue to do what we do every day, and that's convey 28 million gallons of sewage to the wastewater treatment plant to treat it and discharge clean effluent to the Kalamazoo River.
Awesome.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to White's Road, we've got a couple projects that Anthony Ladd will provide updates on, starting with White's Road and then moving to Patterson Street Bridge and Howard Street.
Sure. Thanks, Nolan. White's Road will be another multi-fund project that has road work, stormwater improvements, traffic signal improvements, and water main replacement, which has been kind of our MO lately for some of our projects in previous years, like Parkview Avenue, Oakland Drive, and Cork Street, also on Portage there too. So this work will begin later this year. This is going to be, span a 2 calendar year project starting in 23 and finishing in late 24 construction season. This project has been awarded. However, we have not had our pre-construction meeting just yet. That'll be happening next month in July to fine tune some scheduling that we'll have to put out more information once that becomes aware to us. But it was bid as a project that will be broken up into 3 distinct phases, with phase 1 being done this year, and that'll focus on White's Road between Oakland Drive and Parkview Avenue there. That will be, for the most part, a complete closure. While again we've done many projects in this area, we will make sure to maintain all business access and access for residents and commercial traffic through there. We will have a detour route that routes traffic along Parkview Avenue to Oakland while that work's going on. I think another big part of this project for the city is when the road surface is rebuilt, the lane assignments will be configured into a road diet where we're going from 4 lanes to 3. You have a through lane in each direction and a center turn lane. Again, similar to Cork Street and Portage, some of our other road diets that we've seen improvements from a safety aspect and capacity, helping those turn movements into businesses and residents, and taking that opportunity that's created by replacing the water main there, and quite a substantial upgrade in a lot of places, going from 8-inch water main to 16-inch. And also another added benefit for most of our road diets, we're able to add bike lanes and make pedestrian improvements along that corridor as well, and make it easier to cross and to walk along. This was a project that, again, similar to our projects we've had in previous years, where anytime we have water main, supply chain constraints have been an issue for us. So we're excited to see this project take off, even though it's a little bit of a delay. We're glad to be breaking ground this year. I think that's it for White's Road.
All right.
Patterson Street Bridge. We had the closure of Patterson Street, excuse me, starting in February of this year. It will remain closed through August, roughly right now till about that Labor Day timeframe. This was a project where we were doing a complete deck replacement of the superstructure there on Patterson Street Bridge, crossing the Kalamazoo River. This is, a pretty cut and dry project from the aspect of deck replacements. Work has gone well. There haven't been any surprises. They have just completed pouring the bridge deck itself. We will be doing some sidewalk repair and building railings, and then finishing with painting will be the last activity that's done. That project is on course to finish on time and should be relatively, as far as lane assignments and pedestrian and vehicular movements go, it should be pretty similar to how it was before.
Right.
And then the last project I guess I'll speak on is our Howard Street project from Oakland Drive to Stadium Drive that is currently going. It started this month, and it will finish substantially by the end of July. They have completed resurfacing in the southbound, or the south side of Howard Street there, and have switched traffic over to start work on the northern side of Howard Street. This was an opportunity where the surface was in need of repair and rehabilitation. And while we were doing that, we saw an opportunity to create pedestrian enhancement there by putting in a pedestrian refuge island that will run from Waite Avenue on the south side of Howard and connect to the non-motorized pathway that Western Michigan University is on their property that they maintain and operate, that will connect to our non-motorized path that we installed further up on Howard Street a couple of years ago and onto our non-motorized pathway on Stadium Drive. So really make a big non-motorized connection there that we're excited to see. And of course, further to the south, you have the pedestrian refuge island that was installed through the Parkview Avenue project last year. So really kind of starting to connect the dots and allow for non-motorized traffic to navigate through neighborhoods, to the universities, to downtown. Just really something that we're excited about, and it's been a great project so far, and glad to see that that surface replaced.
All right, thank you, Anthony. So moving on next, we'll move on to Westnedge Avenue and Michigan Avenue with Dennis Randolph and George Waring.
I guess I can start out and talk about Westnedge, and in particular, we're starting to get results back regarding the lane narrowings and lane reductions that we've done on Westnedge over the last several years. And while the data is still, there's still not a lot of data, only a year or a year and a half of data to compare, what we're finding, and I think this is what's most interesting for folks, is that in terms of crashes, severity is down. And it's down significantly. I think we've been talking the last couple of days on WMUK about 10% reductions in severity. Actually, it may be it may be higher than that. But again, we don't have a lot of data. Usually we like 3 years of data to be statistically confident in something. But what the trends are showing are very much a reduction in severity and in particular reduction in bike crashes. Not only on Westnedge, but all over the city, which is very good. I think that's a lot of folks concerned about that. And I believe what's happening is we have been able to get average speeds to be reduced to or 3 miles an hour on our higher volume streets or streets where we've been doing work. And that speed reduction goes directly to a severity reduction. Severity is fatal crashes and crashes where people go to hospitals or get physically injured in a crash. So those are the real targets. Overall, we're at least on the projects that the streets we're affecting, overall crashes are down slightly, around 2%, which is good citywide because we don't have projects. We haven't been able to complete projects all over the city yet. So the numbers are all pointed in the right direction, which is, I think, what we've been interested in. So as we continue our traffic calming work and again, people continue to get more used to new traffic patterns on Portage and Westnedge and streets like that, those severity numbers are going to keep coming down. I expect certainly on the big job that George will talk about in a minute on Michigan Avenue, where we'll be doing some substantial things to reduce speeds, that this will really contribute. By next year, we should have even more reduction in severity, which is one of those key indicators that we look for in terms of safety on our streets. So I think that's all I really have regarding the work we've been doing out on Westnedge and Portage. And maybe George could talk about Michigan right now.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. George?
Yeah, appreciate that, Dennis. So Michigan Avenue, where we are in this project is we've completed the first phase of work on Michigan Avenue, which was the pothole patching. So that was completed as of late May. And the next phase for us is going to be to seal up the roadway. So we're going to be doing some crack sealing as part of the prep work, and then doing a surface seal, which is called a fog seal, and putting that down. Once that's completed, the road will be restriped and painted. Basically, what we're doing there is taking away redundant lanes. So lanes that are just redundant and lead towards faster speeds, kind of as Dennis was saying there. So really trying to have traffic move through Michigan Avenue at a consistent rate at the speed limit at a safe speed through our downtown area, which is very important to us. Making sure that we can have pedestrians crossing north-south across Michigan Avenue without having really fast traffic coming at them. So with that, there's going to be some changes to the on-street parking location. So that'll be moved out. And then in the remaining space, after those safety improvements have been made, we'll have some room for a two-way bike facility. So that's what's going to be going in on Michigan Avenue. And all of that, this next phase with the sealing work and the restriping, that's going to start July 17th. There'll be some preparatory work going forward on that. And then the actual configuration change will be in place by early August. And then that two-way cycle track will open up after that.
Yeah, one thing I might add about, in addition to the kind of the physical changes to the pavement and the markings, is that we're also going to be trying out bicycle signals out along the route. So everybody will have a different display indication to look at out on Michigan Avenue, but we're excited about that. You see them. I know I see them all the time in DC when I go to meetings there, and it's a nice enhancement. Again, we're trying a lot of new things as part of our project. So, we put the green bike paint out there on Westnedge and Park downtown. So again, everybody might look and pay attention to those bike signals because they will allow opportunities for bicyclists to travel safer and cross intersections. We hope bicyclists also will obey the signals that are out there to make everything safer for everybody.
Dennis, and I also think it's important kind of to talk about as we are introducing these new road elements in these projects, and specifically on Michigan Avenue, that the added benefit of doing these pilots right now is leading into our full design of Michigan Avenue when it goes from one way to two way. That'll get started later this year and probably take the next 18 months or 2 years to complete. So, one of our added benefits to doing this now is to collect that information and see what could work in a permanent design project when we do that project later on.
Yeah, that's a good point, because traffic devices, people don't respond to them the same in different areas. And so what may work in one location may need to be tweaked slightly if when we use it in Kalamazoo. It's not that it wouldn't work, but we have to make sure we know where it goes and let people know what the signs mean, which is even more important, because new signs are always, people don't always have a chance to learn what they are before they go in. So this is a real good trial. We're trying to be very careful. The numbers that I'm seeing, again, the crash numbers, which we are just constantly monitoring the crash and the speed numbers. But the crash numbers in particular are good, considering that the trends in the state are for severity to be increasing, fatalities especially, and that we are at least able to hold our own, but even better, have slight reductions, mean that I think our approach has been a good, safe approach. So, we don't want people to get hurt while we're trying out something new. Another thing people might be looking for also, especially with the Michigan Avenue job, is that we will be putting some no turn on red signs in at the intersections, again, to help pedestrians and make sure that car drivers do yield to pedestrians. And that's exactly what a no turn on red sign is about. Where exactly they're all going to go, we don't know yet. It's one of those things where you try to put the signs in at the right place to help the most people, but you may start seeing more of those signs too. Again, the whole idea is to make things safe for pedestrians, especially downtown, for bicyclists, for other types of vehicles that might be on the streets, and certainly for drivers and cars. We don't want drivers and cars to be hurt either.
So moving right along, thank you for that Michigan Ave update. I think I was muted, so let's dive into the sidewalk repair. I think this is Tom.
Yep. Yeah. So first we've got a few leftovers from last year. And these are actually, I believe these are new sidewalk items. Yeah, these aren't actually part of the repair, but these are for new sidewalk.
Yeah, here you go.
Yeah, going on to repair, we've got this year for our repair project, we got it pretty much down to these pretty much down to 5 major streets, or I should say 4 major streets and one smaller one. Cameron's not quite as busy of a road as the rest of them, but then yeah, Vine Street being over on the right side there, being one of those that we're going to be adding to this. And then Palmer also is going to see some work, but that's that goes into our gap project, our new sidewalk project as well. So basically, we've got two really big sidewalk projects going. The repair project is the first one, and we call it gap fill project is the second one. Gap fill being, you know, there's no sidewalk there right now. We're putting it in brand new. So
Tom, could you describe what goes into sidewalk repair?
yeah, so it's we're looking for areas in the city that where the sidewalk is the condition is just falling apart. It's not up to standards with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which means that, you know, if somebody's in a wheelchair or blind or anything else that makes it, you know, makes them a more vulnerable user. You know, we want to bring our sidewalks to a level where the most vulnerable users are going to be able to easily use sidewalks. So what we see a lot is one of the most common things we see is sidewalk upheaval where there are tree roots underneath it, but we see everything. You know, there's areas where it's just cracked really bad because it's so old. There's areas where the surface of the sidewalk is worn away, and there's grass growing on it, all kinds of stuff like that. So anywhere that we've got kind of hazardous sidewalk, especially around schools, around bus stops, and in areas that get a lot of pedestrian usage, we're really going after those areas and making repairs. So yeah, these are and yeah, like you can see on the slide, these major sidewalk repair projects, the 4 listed there. Our contractor started on these around the beginning of this month, and they finished up Alamo, and they've mostly finished up Cameron Street as well. They've got just a few more touches to make there, and then they're going to be not in the city for a couple weeks, but then mid-July they'll be getting going on Mount Olivet. Portage Street might be a little bit complicated because it gets down to towards 94 where the construction is still going on. That's an MDOT project, and that project has been delayed, and we're not quite sure when they're going to be done. I think their projected date is sometime this fall. So we're going to do what we can with Portage Street, repair everything that we can without, you know, creating more headaches by having 2 different jurisdictions trying to do construction around each other. So yeah, we got to let MDOT finish their thing, and then we can get the rest of Portage. But we're going to do what we can. But Mount Olivet is where they'll be going next. And then another one, yeah, we've got Vine Street on here. We'll be working kind of around Bronson Hospital. There's quite a bit of broken sidewalk there. So we want to get that fixed up so that, you know, we make sure that around the hospital, which is, you know, such a critical part of our infrastructure, we want to make sure that's accessible to everybody. And then another one that's not on here is Maple Street. That's a street that we recently repaved, and we've done quite a bit of sidewalk work as part of that repaving project too, on Maple between Park and Burdick. So that was one that I also wanted to add that came to mind. I was gonna get that to you, Nolan, so you could put it on the slideshow here, and I just didn't get it to you in time. But yeah, so we've got quite a bit going right now for sidewalk repair, and then yeah, moving on to sidewalk gap fill or new sidewalk. I'll let George talk about that one. You're muted, George.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so sidewalk gap fill, right now we are going to proceed with a change order actually to this contract. So at the moment we have all of these streets are underneath work and are finishing up. So we currently have sidewalks installed at Fraternity, Village Drive, California, and Berkshire. There are a few punch list items needed for that to finish those up. And then Harrison Street and Park Street are finishing up sidewalk installation the week of the 4th of July. They'll finish late that week with the sidewalk installation there. And then we'll proceed on to these streets here, which would be Springmont Avenue, Barnard, Palmer, Stockbridge, and Northampton. And so these are areas where we are installing new sidewalk, where there currently isn't any, and there are existing gaps in the network. So each of these have been either requests in the past or lead to neighborhood amenities. And so we are going to be installing installing sidewalk in these locations. So it's been a really neat program, one we're very excited about having going on. And good part is, for the construction wise, we're about 2 months ahead of schedule on the GAP project. So that's really good news. Our contractor we've been working with has been very good to work with and been staying well ahead of even where the schedule was.
All right. Thank you, George. Thank you, Tom, for those sidewalk updates. We'll move in. We've got about 20 minutes left. I know we've got a couple questions in the chat feature already. Like I mentioned at the beginning, you can submit your comments there and we'll get to as many of those questions that are related to these specific projects as we can. Any questions about other projects or programs, you can direct you to 311. Not only does that get you into our system with your information and a way to contact you back, gets you connected with the right staff so we can actually try to answer any questions more quickly. So jumping into the Q&A, let's see. So I think we'll start with a question about Howard. Anthony, there's a question here that says they've heard about changes to Howard Street from Oakland to Westnedge. This is one of the more dangerous stretches of roadway with a school along the road. Is there a plan to reconfigure or add pedestrian infrastructure there for children walking or riding to and from school? So is there any work in the future that's going to connect to the current Howard Street work?
Yeah, so for this project in particular, we do not have any new mid-block crossings on White's Avenue. What we are doing, though, that, I guess it creates safety for pedestrians and motorists, is going from the 4-lane to 3-lane configuration, introducing that road diet by narrowing lanes and not having redundant through lanes. You're creating a more uniform, predictable space for vehicles. There's only one lane to stay in unless they're turning left. One of the things that we'll be doing at existing intersections are making pedestrian improvements with pavement markings and making signal enhancements too, to make sure that we're allocating time for pedestrians to cross there. Yeah, I think that should question about pedestrian traffic. There's also a question on the I guess the flow or redundancy for White's Avenue.
Yep.
And I guess one thing I want to mention about that intersection in particular, as well as at Parkview and Oakland, one of the things that we'll be doing at Parkview and Oakland is making a left-hand turn, dedicated left-hand turn there at that intersection. That intersection will function much more like a traditional 8-phase intersection that everybody's used to seeing. And then on White's, as you approach Oakland, it will actually be for that traffic will be only able to turn north. So we hope to mitigate some of the congestion there while still allowing traffic to access businesses and get to where they need to go, but reduce, I guess, some of that redundancy, if you will, and make sure that these roads are making sense.
Great, thanks, Anthony. Dennis, we had a question regarding Westnedge. From Whites to Fairview, are there changes coming to the street design of that section of Westnedge?
I'll tell you, I think we're looking at resurfacing at this point, but in terms of doing other things, it's still one of those streets where we're trying to figure out or come up with ideas that might make it better. So is there anything firm right now? No, other than some upgrading, to improve the surface quality and things like that. Again, one of the things that is happening is we've got a couple years of data to show us, a year and a half or 2 years of data to show us how our projects are working. And it's real helpful to have that kind of information when we look at new projects or try to fix up problem areas. Westnedge is certainly at the top of the list in terms of trying to do, try to manage speeds, try to control driver operations so that they're a little more consistent and uniform and safe. So we're open to suggestions, if nothing else, to help us look at what we might be able to do with the streets, and also make sure that if there's opportunities to get federal money to help us with a job like that, we have ideas stacked up. So nothing firm right at this point, though, I guess is the short answer, Nolan.
Nolan, if I could add to that real quick.
Sure.
For that Westnedge project, some of the details that we didn't get into, beyond lane assignments, as Dennis referenced, that lane configuration will stay the way it is currently, and why we say it that way is that we'll have, to some extent, those bike lanes that are currently there in place. But this Westnedge project will be another multi-fund project, including sanitary sewer work and water main replacement. That will include some different phasing that hasn't been determined yet. And because, again, of supply chain constraints, this project will not start. It's assumed it will not start until early 2024. So we have a little time to get more information out to the public on that and communicate detour routes. But want to make sure that that's mentioned too. This will not be strictly a resurfacing project. We have some infrastructure work to do below grade.
Got it. Thank you for those answers, Anthony and Dennis. George and Tom, we had a question regarding Portage Street sidewalk. I think that's a part of the repair, so I'm not sure if this applies, but they're asking if any new sidewalk will be installed along the Millam Golf Course edge, running north from Kilgore Road, as none exists there now.
Yeah, this is as part of our, this is just part of our repair project. So we're not going to be doing new sidewalk as part of this project. I do know that area is on our gap list. But I'm not, maybe George would know better than me if we've got concrete plans for that yet, or if it's still kind of in the works a little bit.
Yeah, that's still underneath consideration at the moment. So we'll be looking at it, see about feasibility for that area, but nothing yet budgeted for construction.
Yeah.
Great, thanks. Another Howard Street related question, Anthony, related to.
Can I answer that one, Nolan?
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's actually about a future project for Howard. So the Howard Street Anthony's talking about is from Stadium to Oakland. A couple of these questions about Howard Street and the crossing at Merrill and crossings near this magnet school. That's for projects coming up in 25 or later. So right now we're still in the early design phases of that. We are looking at some road reconfigurations as well as some additional outreach with the community and the school and understanding the needs of the area. So still fairly early on in the design for that, but there will be some safety changes coming for Howard Street.
Awesome. Appreciate that, George. There was one question, I think, related to the construction on Howard between Oakland and Stadium. It was saying, is it true that once construction's done, we will not be able to make a left turn from Waite onto Howard? If that's so, why would that be?
Yeah, that is not the case. That traffic will still be able to turn left from Waite onto Howard towards Stadium Drive. We wanted to make sure that that island was in a location that still allowed for safe left-hand turn movements. So that will still be allowed as it was previously.
Great.
Yeah, I think, Nolan, just one of the things about the islands and when we're looking at streets, islands help us in a couple ways. Pedestrians certainly have a safer crossing, and especially around schools, that's important. But one of the problems we're having around town is that, especially on our streets with center left turn lanes, the left turn only lanes, we're getting some violations of people. And so the islands, I guess we're trying to place islands to help stop that particular really dangerous situation. And so we're building some islands. We're looking at some other places. But when we can do two purposes with an island, it's really nice. It makes a lot more use of the money that we have to spend for pedestrians and for protection of vehicles. So and another thing about the highway designs, especially when we're looking at the bicycle designs, one of the things that we have to consider is that generally we're doing our work between existing curbs, because to widen streets past the curbs just runs the cost up significantly. It makes it almost impossible to do a job, and it ends up with folks having sidewalks and curbs right up almost to their front door, which is not desirable. In order for us to have proper lane widths and for us to have a bike lane, for example, that is safe, which is 5 foot at least. So while we have some things that we can do to make lanes narrower, we can't build narrow lanes on every street because of say truck traffic and emergency vehicles and things like that. But so we try to work within existing curbs and do as much as we can, but sometimes the numbers, the vehicles, how fast they're going, how fast we want them to go, all fit together and make it difficult to make some of the big changes that folks would like, and I think frankly that we'd like, but it's just difficult to fit them in. They tend to be real long-term projects if we're really going to do something, because of the cost and the disruption they make to people's lives. I just thought that would help. I think we're looking everywhere we can to do things like bike lanes and to make traffic calmer, but it tends to be a geometric chess game, moving things back and forth in the limited areas that we have to work in. So sometimes the engineering takes quite a while.
That's great context, Dennis. Thank you for that answer. I think with that, we've gotten to all of the questions that were inputted into the Q&A. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending today and for your questions. Just a quick reminder, like I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, that this will be posted to the City of Kalamazoo YouTube page, this recording, usually within a week of the webinar. If you have, or you want to learn more information or stay in touch with these projects, you can visit the City of Kalamazoo website. You can sign up for or subscribe for updates there. And you can always send further questions and comments on these and other projects to 311. Thank you all for attending. Thank you panelists for being here, and stay tuned for the next one. Thanks.